Hey, we are on our next set of careers. So we're going to talk about the business of fashion, some careers that one you may be familiar with, the other two you probably haven't thought about. So just think of this way: envision, a Tiffany necklace, right? So you think of its environment, you think of, the suede jewelry pouch, you think of the blue box, and you think of it being tied up in a white ribbon. But there's some things that you probably haven't thought about. So have you thought about the building that houses the store, right? The kiosk that you walk by in the mall, the boutique in a strip center, a strip mall, or a website's landing page, right? These are all the functions of fashion businesses. These are all the locations of fashion business. Traditionally, when we think about retailing, we think about, brick and mortar stores. We think about a location that has to focus on what the aesthetics look like. So that's what we're going to talk about in the first job. We're going to talk about visual merchandising or store planning director, and how they set up the store to be visually appealing. And the version of that for the online would be the digital marketing manager, which we talked about in a previous lecture. The fashion industry is a visual one. It's a visual industry. And as a result, the way a fashion business is, building their exterior and their interior looks can affect the company's, their profitability and image. So, at the beginning of this, we talked about Tiffany. You have an idea of what a Tiffany store looks like. You also have an idea of what the clearance section of a Forever 21 looks like too. So what is visual merchandising, right? Visual merchandising is what is known in the fashion industry as a silent salesperson, right? Visual merchandising refers to the design, the development, the installation of merchandise displays that enhance the ambiance and environment of the store and entices you to make a purchase. Effective visual merchandising, what that does is that aim is to create an image that reflects the company and, more importantly, sells that company's product, right? So some visual merchandising efforts are institutional. So if we think about the Herald Square in Macy's, at the holiday time, them and some of the other Fifth Avenue stores have these extravagant window displays. But some visual merchandising is just product driven. And again, Tiffany, if you go into a mall that has a Tiffany store, into a freestanding store in Manhattan, they have shadow box windows that highlight all of their jewelry pieces. So visual merchandisers are the people that are responsible for in-store displays and those window installations. They're responsible for signage and fixtures and mannequins and decoration. It could be seasonal decoration that gives that retail operation an aesthetic appeal and a distinct point of view. And visual merchandisers are basically stylists. They are stylists that have the ability to look at the merchandise and make some creative choices with it. The choices that a visual merchandiser makes entices us as customers to come into the store. You've been walking in the mall and something caught your eye. You stop real quick, turn on a dime. And part of what their job is to attribute to purchases. That is really the role, the goal of a visual merchandiser. So what are their key responsibilities? So a visual merchandiser, their essential responsibility is for designing aesthetically pleasing environments that I said reflect the company's image, as I said earlier, creating displays that educate the customers and sell merchandise, and presenting merchandise in a way that will maximize sales. So either displaying a full range of colors or layering, so taking items from different departments and putting them in one display. The visual merchandiser can be seen as an extension of the buying team, right? Because they help determine which merchandise is going to be featured. So as a result, they need to have an understanding of what the buyer's perspective was when they bought that merchandise. And since one of the main goals of the merchandiser is to increase revenue, they need to make sure that they are making displays with the most fashion forward and key items. Additionally, the visual merchandiser and the buyer may want to work together, right? They may work together alternatively for items and products that aren't selling well to increase, sales on those items. Where an item is in the store affects its purchases, how it's displayed affects its purchases. So visual merchandisers are often called in to help make those decisions to move slow selling items. So in addition to actually just being a visual merchandiser, we talked about them being, the stylists for the store. There are a handful of auxiliary businesses that have developed that increase the emphasis. Visual merchandisers usually have a prop house that they work with, whether it's for the company or not. I love going into Anthropologie. I think their visual merchandising team does the greatest job with their displays, and they use a lot of furniture and fixtures. Part of what those visual merchandisers do is they also, in addition to the furniture and the fixtures, they have decor and accessories. There are teams especially for large companies who only work on mannequins and equipment and fixture supplies. Those things that we need in the stores, the T-stands, the rounders, and the four-ways, and slat wall, all that stuff is really important. And visual merchandisers do that, and many times we don't think of that as a career option. Visual merchandisers also, in addition to working specifically for a company, that oftentimes they're contractors, and they're hired by retailers or manufacturers to talk about the efficient use of space. And computer-aided systems such as planograms, which tells you, where each item, literally where the placement of racks and fixtures and display units and actual items will go, is important. So what are the qualifications? Oddly enough, there is an entire class just on visual merchandising, right? So these handful of slides that you're about to get right now is definitely not going to paint the whole picture. But the qualifications are a 2 or 4 year degree in fashion, merchandising design, interior design, retail planning, fine arts, visual arts. Visual merchandisers always don't have a fashion background, but they definitely have a creative background. And how do you start, right? You start usually by being an assistant to an assistant in a store, or you become proficient at displays if you are in a chain location that doesn't have a visual merchandiser for every store. Oftentimes they come from, interior design or styling backgrounds, but generally it is something that you start at a store level and work your way up. The characteristic needed for a visual merchandiser is really just having an understanding of design and marketing and having a good aesthetic sensibility, right? Being able to put together outfits in ways that your company likes, or putting things together in ways that are much more unique. And a visual merchandiser has a breadth and skill of knowledge. They also have a good, eye for, color and balance and proportion, depending on the organization, some theatrical vision, right? A strong sense of fashion, the ability to follow time and budget schedules and develop, schematics and displays using some computer-aided software. And finally, the visual merchandiser is not only self-motivated, but they also have to be able to, take direction and to execute work as a team member. So this is a position that requires you to work really well under pressure. So what are the career challenges for visual merchandisers? Essentially, the first rung on the ladder is a display associate, and it's paid a fairly low level wage. It's a minimum level wage. So those initial sacrifices that you have to make in your career can be challenging. The other thing is, it's just not, being the stylist for the store, but it's also, vacuuming and cleaning windows and refurbishing props to stay in budget as well. The great part is that, visual merchandisers aren't just a retail job. So many companies outside of the retail industry hire visual merchandisers as part of their staff. So home furnishings and accessory manufacturers, beauty cosmetic firms, trend forecasters, fabric companies, trend websites, all of those hire visual merchandisers as well. And then there's always the opportunity to be self-employed to help with pop-up shops.